And hello and welcome to another Infobots podcast. This is episode number 14, and I am your host, Frederick Fishman, and today and every day we are sponsored by me. So for links to all of my books, apparel, and gear, go to my main Infobots website at Infobots, and that is spelled with 2 T's, Infobots.com. You can also help us out and show your support by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/Infobots podcast. Okay, let's get started. The Spanish flu, which has also been compared to what we're going through now with the coronavirus, was also known as the 1918 flu pandemic, and it was an unusually deadly influenza pandemic caused by the H1N1 influenza A virus. It lasted from February 1918 to April 1920. It infected 500 million people during that time, about a third of the world's population. In 4 successive waves, it killed. And it killed an estimated 50 million people. It occurred during World War I, so censors here in the U.S. kept a lid on stories about the spreading pandemic. Reports about Spain, however, were not censored, so the impression was given then that the flu originated in Spain. Therefore, the Spanish flu. No precise point was ever discovered of its origination. The Spanish flu seemed to have a particularly harsh effect on young adults, which had their immune system ravaged by the disease. That was called a cytokine storm. Recent studies have found that the virus that caused this pandemic seemed to be no more aggressive than previous virus attacks. But World War I had brought on malnourishment, overcrowded medical institutions, and hospitals. There was poor hygiene rampant around the world, and all of that promoted a superbacterial infection. This superinfection killed most of the victims after long stays in the hospital, with victims lying in their deathbed. In 1918, there were no antibiotics. The first wave of the pandemic was marked in March of 1918 in Kansas. The second deadly wave hit in August 1918. The third wave hit in January 1919. It too spread around the world. There was a fourth wave in 1920, but it was minor, and it spread, affecting mostly scattered areas of New York City. Opening symptoms included sore throat, headache, and fever. Then skin spots, black splotches on the skin, all types of other grotesque symptoms that will not be explained here that affected many parts of the body. The major cause of death was bacterial pneumonia. Again, not available then were antibiotics or steroids. There was tremendous economic loss, emotional loss, and physical loss. It was not until 1928 that penicillin, the first true antibiotic, was discovered by Alexander Fleming, professor of bacterial at St. Mary's Hospital in London, that caused any relief. There have been many comparisons over the last several months with today's COVID-19 pandemic, 100 years after the last worldwide pandemic. We can only hope that a new vaccine and treatments will produce much better outcomes than what the world saw in 1918. And now you know. I want to thank you for listening. We hope that you will support our efforts to bring you this daily Infobots podcast. You can also help us out by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/Infobots podcast. And join us again for another episode of the Infobots podcast. Bye-bye.